I want to talk to you a little bit about opportunity for a minute. How many of you guys know there's opportunities? This is the time of year you go to the store and they're trying to tell you, hey, buy this. Great opportunity, cheap. As I was praying about this message, I thought about a story. This was, my goodness, this is 23 years ago or so. I was working in a Christian bookstore, and a pastor came in and offered me to be a youth pastor in Joplin, Missouri. I looked at the guy and said, I don't think I want to do that. I live in Springfield. I don't want to drive an hour to work in a church. He said, why don't you pray about it? I said, yeah, I'll do that. So he called me up again and said, well, you going to be my youth pastor? I said, I don't know. I don't think so. How much are you going to be able to pay me? He goes, well, I don't know. We could pay you sometimes. It's like, oh, this doesn't sound like a good idea. Like, well, maybe you could be the youth pastor over the summer. I go, I can't go be your youth pastor over summer. I got to go home and work. I got to pay for my Bible college bill. This is not a good idea, but I wouldn't tell the guy no. Opportunities. Sometimes opportunities don't seem like they're that good. Sometimes it seems like maybe something's put before you that you're not sure you want. Do anybody know what I'm talking about? I'm sitting there, I'm praying, and for some reason I can't get that church off my mind. Can't stop thinking about that pastor and what he's asking me about. And it's just a dumb idea. I'm thinking, dumb idea. If I go and work in this church, I'm not going to be able to pay for my college. Why would I do this? This is the dumbest thing on the face of the planet. So he called me up a week or so later, and I'm picking up the phone. I'm at the bookstore there, and I'm talking to him on the phone, and he says, are you going to do this? And I go, yes. I'm thinking, well, what am I doing? What am I doing? This is stupid. I'm taking an opportunity that doesn't seem like it's the best thing. Well, I could stretch this story out, and I don't want to, but I ended up going out there, and, they'd give me a $50 check maybe every other week, every now and then. I'm barely living hand to mouth, struggling. But about a month after I said yes, and about 2 weeks after I would have been gone from Bible college, I was working at the Christian bookstore still, and this one girl comes walking in. Her name was Bobby Gray. I said, man, I'd like to talk to that girl. And I did. And the rest was history. I know a couple of months later, I came up to visit this this corn pone church in the middle of nowhere, Smithton Community Church. What is this place? This is summer of 1995. This is going to be awful. I'm driving up, seeing the rusted gas canisters and the tractor on the side of the road. And I get in there, and I hear a man preach a sermon from Romans that was incredible and powerful, and my life was changed. You say, well, what's the point of that story? Well, I took an opportunity that seemed like hard. It seemed difficult. It seemed like maybe not the right way to go. It didn't fit the natural way of looking at things. But God was in the middle of it, because I would have never met my wife if I didn't obey God. I would have never been brought into a great revival movement that changed my life. It's given me a place, given me a community, given me a hope, given me an opportunity to share and do and be. But I took an opportunity in just a moment that seemed like not the right way to go. You say, well, how'd you pay for school? Well, right at the tail end, my dad gave me a car to sell. I come walking in to school with cash money, paying for it the last day possible. God miraculously provided for me at the end. Opportunities come before us. They're moments, and I was thinking about this, and I think I want to. I know a couple of people in this church that took opportunities, because sometimes what you want to do or what you feel like you need to do doesn't seem like the right thing. It seems like the kind of thing that doctors would tell you not to do. But where's Luke and Dina at? Right in the front, man. I'm missing you guys. Sit down for just a minute here. Just a few years back, you guys had a son. What those doctors tell you coming into that?
They said a lot of things, but one of the biggest things is they said that his heart was probably not going to be developed, his lungs were probably not going to be developed. They were preparing us for end-of-life decisions.
Yeah, so they basically told you should not follow through, right?
Correct, yeah.
But what'd you say?
I said, after a long time, I basically said, you know what? I don't care what you said. We've prayed. God has promised. We're going to walk this out, and we're going to stand strong.
So what do we have today?
We have almost a 3-year-old little boy that's perfect.
Opportunities. Taking a moment. Yeah, you guys can sit down there. You know, and I know here we've got the Snyders here too. Where are you guys at? I'm way back there. Well, I could tell their story. You know, the doctors told them pretty much the same thing. And their sweet little girl was one of the youngest babies born. And that girl's still doing great, you know, and won't be long before she gets to come home. Yeah. Sabrina, I think you're here too, aren't you? Did I see Sabrina? Hey, Sabrina, why don't you stand up and tell your story too here, if you don't mind. Opportunities, guys.
Basically the same thing. The doctor said that our son wouldn't have any lung development, that he wouldn't be able to live outside the womb. And we said, well, he has a strong heartbeat, and we're going to move forward with this because God promised that he's our promised son. And so, yep, 7-month-old, and he's doing healthy, doing good, and he's at home with Dad right now, staying away from all you sick people.
Opportunities, taking opportunities, seizing a moment, grabbing a hold of something. Now, I think most of you here would go, you know, yeah, well, of course, we're going to go for life and not death. Well, of course. But see, they had the doctors telling them to do other things. You know, the doctors are trying to, you know, in their little kind way that doctors try to have, you know, that I'm not always fond of. They're trying to tell you, why don't you abort this child? Make it easier on yourself, easier on the rest of us. That would just make sense to go ahead and not follow through on this. And here, you know, it's like, you know, do what normal people do, they would tell you. Don't take the opportunity. Don't go for the greater thing. Don't go for the thing that seems maybe a little bit out of reach. Don't go for something, you know, beyond what is normal. You know what I love about these families, all three of the families I just showed you, they all were willing to go and take the opportunity to do the thing that seemed unlikely, to do the thing that others told them not to do. They stood and they prevailed. That's something you ought to just thank God for right there, right? It's amazing. There are other people in this church that have had similar stories, but what I'm getting at is this, that sometimes the opportunities that we need to take don't always seem to others like the best choice. It doesn't always seem like the thing that we should grab hold of, the thing that would fit. It doesn't always fit culture. It doesn't always fit moments. It doesn't always fit our experiences. It doesn't always make us feel comfortable. See, God is inviting us sometimes to go somewhere we've never been, and we're not sure we want to go there. Are we going to seize the opportunity? Are we going to say yes? Are we going to move through the places that we need to go? Israel had to deal with that, and I want to share with you today a story from Israel. I've preached from this passage before, but not the way I'm going to preach this today. But I want to ask you, if you will, turn with me to Exodus chapter 19. This is a pivotal story. In fact, the more I've studied and the more I've read, I do believe that this may be one of the most pivotal stories in all of the Old Testament. And the way we usually tell it is a certain way, but I want to invite you to look at it a little bit differently with me today. And now you say, what's happening here in this passage? Why are you talking about Israel here in the Exodus? Well, I think it's fitting because I think these are stories that we're in the middle of. We're a community on the march, people trying to find our way, people with great calling and destiny, just the way they are. And you know, and it isn't easy. When we look back on these stories now, we forget that these are people living through moments, people having to make decisions, people that had to bring, you know, all their past forward and trying to find a way forward in the midst of confusion and challenge. We know now how the stories end, but they didn't. But the thing is, we don't know how our stories end. We don't know what's going to happen here at World Revival Church. We don't know what 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we don't know what that will hold for us. We are building a story. We are making a destiny. The future that we want is going to be dependent in part on the choices that we make. That there isn't this sort of, God just making everything happen whether we like it or not. God's going to do great things. The question is whether we're involved with it or not. If we don't go along with it, He'll just go somewhere else and do it. God will do great things, but you might not be involved. The question is, are you willing to take the opportunity? The question was Israel ready to take the opportunity? You know the story here. They left Egypt. They're going through the wilderness here, and they're now coming up before Mount Sinai. It's this great moment, God made them out, brought them out of disaster and trouble, darkness, calamity. And He's taking them into something, moving them towards something beautiful and powerful. And it's a moment of transformation. It's a moment of purpose. Because you see something in the ancient world, people didn't know God the way we know God today often. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I was talking to Rabbi Feldman, and he said this to me. He said, well, you know that Joseph's brothers didn't know what to do with his forgiveness because forgiveness didn't exist at that time. Do you know the pagan world had no notion of forgiveness? No notion of fidelity. Those are foreign ideas in the ancient world. The ancient world is a very violent, fierce, bloodthirsty world. And God comes in the middle of that world. And they don't know what to do with God. They don't know where to go with God. And God is wanting to invite a people to go someplace they've never been. There's a lot of whispers that say, well, I don't know if that's really the way to go. Just like these families we were hearing from. They're saying, we want to stand for the life of our child, and the doctors say, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Sometimes we don't know if the opportunities before us are ones we really want to take. God wants to invite all of Israel to come and encounter Him and to live before Him like sons and daughters. An idea that's completely foreign to the ancient world. The idea of a God relating to people that way is absolutely foreign to their understanding. God wants the people of Israel to come up on the mountain and encounter Him the way Moses had. He wants all of the nation, do you hear me here? All of the nation, not just the priests, not just the elders of the family, all the people to come up on the mountain and to experience His glory and His goodness. Do you hear what I'm trying to say? Not just a few, He wanted the whole nation. You say, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, people at that time didn't encounter God. And as we're going to find a little later on, Israel struggled with this. The idea that we all could encounter God, that we could all begin to know Him deeply and powerfully, richly. The idea that somehow Israel would be called His firstborn. That's what God told Moses to say to Pharaoh. You know the passage, Exodus 4:22. This is what the Lord says, Israel is my firstborn son. God called Israel His son, His firstborn son. And His desire is that God, would begin to treat them, to work with them, to pull them into a sense of family, to a sense of connection that was just the same way that God had worked with Adam in the beginning. Can I tell you a little secret here? We often make the Bible a story of justice and judicial actions, but the Bible is really a story of family, in the idea of people becoming family. But the ancient world could not fathom this. Sadly, the modern church cannot either. We make it about so many other things, but family. Verse 3 here at Exodus chapter 19, it says that then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, "This is what you're to say to the house of Jacob and declare to the sons of Israel. You saw what I did to the Egyptians." What he's saying here is you saw the wonders. You saw the incredible actions. You saw as I proceeded to undermine every Egyptian god. You saw as I brought deliverance to you in the face of the most powerful nation on the planet. You see, some of you say, well, what are you getting at, JD? God wants to send His wonders and His glory. But the wonders and glory are not just for us to see wonders and glory. They're to invite us to something more, to see something more, to perceive something more. Signs and wonders are not an end unto themselves, but they're an invitation to something greater, something more glorious. You saw what I did to the Egyptians and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. He says, I not only delivered you out of all this trouble, I not only vanquished every wicked god that Egypt had. Not only that, but I carried you like an eagle would carry his young. Like the mother eagle would gather her children unto herself and protect them from the enemy. And I brought you to myself. God is talking to them about gathering them as family, gathering them as His own, gathering them into deep connection, gathering them into those that would know Him, connect with Him, see Him, enjoy Him, have an awareness of who He really is. But this is unfathomable to the ancient world, because how could one know a God? In the ancient world, a God is one you put a sacrifice to, not one you spoke to. It was one that you were fearful of, not one that you would commune with. In the ancient world, all the gods of the other nations were bloodthirsty warlords. And Israel had a hard time understanding God any other way. But God said this, I brought you in. I carried you. I cared for you. Now would you obey me and keep my covenant? Stay in covenant with me. Stay in family with me. You say, what does covenant mean? Let me give you a really simple definition of covenant. Covenant is a shared sense of identity and a shared sense of responsibility. God says, I want to now treat you like family. Covenant is where you create a context for family where there is no family. And it held the ancient world together. He said, you're going to be my special possession out of all the peoples. For the whole earth belongs to me. But you are to be a kingdom of priests. I was studying this, we kind of hear that kingdom of priests. I think we kind of envision Israel now becoming like the people that wore the ephods and were sacrificing the animals. Did you know that Levitical priesthood didn't exist yet when he said this? There were no priests. You know what this meant? I want you to be a kingdom of elder brothers. The word priest means like the elder brother of the family, mediating the will of the Father. I want you to be those who mediate my purposes. I want the whole nation to be like the eldest son. Do you understand how powerful that kind of language is? I want you to begin to see yourself differently. I want you to begin to envision yourself as a people unlike any other people on the face of the planet. I want you to begin to see the place that I have for you, the intimacy I have for you, the joy I have for you, the place of connection, the place of belonging, the place of identity and purpose, that I'm your Father, that I'm positioning you to mediate who I am, to show the world my nature, my character. I want you to be a kingdom of elder brothers, a kingdom of covenant makers. I want you to be a kingdom of people who will transform the entire face of the earth. And it's going to come out of encounter. It's going to come out of direct, experience of who I am. It's going to come out of you having firsthand knowledge of who I am here on this mountain. Do you understand how powerful this is? Verse 10, a little further down here, it says, the Lord told Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. They must wash their clothes and be ready on the third day. There's big things that happen on the third day, friends. Big things. Sometimes we're always wanting it to happen on the first day, but sometimes resurrections happen on the third day. The world has changed. This is a covenant. He's establishing a covenant with them. And I will come down on Mount Sinai. Do you know the gospel is this, that God comes down, right? God comes down. Not that we go up, but God comes down. That God comes down in the middle of our mess. God comes down in the middle of our foolishness. God comes down in the middle of our distractions. He's inviting us to come and experience Him. God comes down. This is a moment. This coming down is going to be a theophany of all theophanies. It's going to transform the world. There's going to be a nation of sons and daughters, a nation that knows God firsthand, a nation in which God establishes a unique kind of covenant. Can I tell you something here? Not all Bible covenants are the same. I don't want to get complicated here, but let me try to be very simple here. There are covenants in which people come together more like family. Then there are covenants where people come together more like master and slave. All they ever knew in Egypt was the master and slave covenant. But what God is actually offering them here is not a master-slave covenant at all. He's offering them family covenant, of association, of connection, of knowing. A covenant is not just built on behavior. A covenant is just not built on how well you perform. A covenant built on knowledge, experience, glory, power, beauty. Somebody say, well, I thought that was all in the New Testament. Well, surprise, it's in the Old. Verse 16. When morning came on the third day, there was thunder and lightning and a heavy cloud over the mountain and the very loud sound of the ram's horn. All of the people in the camp trembled. Moses brought the people from the camp to meet God. This is a big moment here. They're going to come and meet God. The whole nation's assembled there. They stood at the base of the mountain, and Mount Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke because the Lord had come down in fire on it. Smoke went up from it. It looked like smoke from a kiln, and the whole mountain shook violently. In moments of God's appearing, what is it? There's fire, there's wind, there's shaking of foundations, there's transformation. All throughout the ancient world, they understood that God would come down on the mountains. And they have Eden was on a mountain if you read about it. And later on, God comes down here on Mount Sinai, and later it's Mount Zion. Then later we see Mount Zion, a new Zion coming down. It's the people of God. That God resides on this thundering people, on this great mountain. The hard thing about when we begin to have new opportunities and invitations is that they seldom look simple. Sometimes the things that you're being asked to do are actually very scary or very frightening. You guys know this, the Chronicles of Narnia story where the children hear about this lion figure who's like Jesus. His name's Aslan, and the children hear about this figure, and they're like, "Whoa, he sounds very dangerous, very ferocious." And one of the little girls says, "Is he safe?" And they go, "Well, no, he's not safe, but he is good." See, when you come before the Lord, When God starts inviting you to take an opportunity, the opportunity is not always simple as we might think. It's costly. You can feel the press. You can feel the pull. You can feel the tension against what you're trying to do. It doesn't seem like the reasonable choice to make. It doesn't seem like it makes sense. Why would you go up on this mountain when all you know of all the gods of the nations is their gods will kill you if you even come near them? All they know is the gods of violence and fierceness and ferociousness. They don't know the God of Abraham and Isaac like they should. That's a problem sometimes with us too. God's inviting us to a place, but we don't exactly know because of our experiences, because of what we've already known, because of grandma's religion that tells us certain things. But worse yet, sometimes even because of good things we've learned or whatever. That may have been God taking you up to a certain place, but now He wants to take you somewhere else. See, what I've learned in the Bible is this, that God first moves toward us in terms of who we are and where we are. But He doesn't want us to stay there. He's inviting us now to step a little further. God moved into the Old Testament world with sacrifices, altars, and fierceness because they could not have conceived of a God any other way. But His desire was to bring them closer, to show them more, for them to discover more of who God is. But the problem is we stay in our revelation. We stay in what we've known. God in His grace comes to us in terms of who we are. And then we mistakenly think that's all He is. We don't think we have to go further. And the new opportunities and the new seasons come, and God begins to speak, and we're not sure if that's the reasonable way to go. We're not even sure that's even sound religion. Do you want to hear how the story ends? You sure? You got to skip over the 10 Commandments in chapter 20, most of that. Chapter 20, verse 18. Again, here we are. We're on the mountain. We're on the edge of the mountain, and God's inviting them up. He wants them to be ready to experience Him. He wants Israel to be a nation unlike any other nation. He wants to establish a covenant with them that's more in the vein of kinship, of family. But they have to be willing to move forward. They have to be willing to risk it. They have to be willing. What God says is, I want you to go ahead and step across the line, and I want you to step on the holy mountain where there's fire burning and smoke's coming off it, and everything you've heard from every other religious person in the entire region tells you you're going to die. I want you to go ahead and step across the line and go into this now. I want you to pass beyond the smoke into my glory, and I want you to trust that it won't kill you. Some of you are like, well, I'd do that. No, you wouldn't. You know, you got a lot better theology than they did. You still wouldn't do it. See, opportunities often look like disasters. That's what Pastor Steve's been talking about being broken. Like, it's hard. Like, sometimes the way that God's trying to take you towards something looks so awkward, so strange, so different. The question is, are you going to be willing to take the opportunity? Are you willing to move beyond what you've known, what you've felt, what you've seen, what you understand religion to be, to discover something more? What about ancient Israel? Were they willing to do that? This is the most marvelous experience in all the Bible that they're being invited to. A whole nation encountering God. A whole nation being like sons and daughters. A whole nation of priests. Not just the Levites. That's after they blew it. The whole nation being mediators. The whole nation being ministers. The whole nation knowing God directly and mediating who He is to creation. Verse 18, all the people experienced the thunder and the lightning and the sound of the ram's horn. Apparently this horn had a metal piece at the end of the shofar that would make it resonate even louder. And the smoking mountain. And as the people experienced it, they trembled and they stood at a distance. You know, sometimes that's what begins to happen to us. We come before opportunities. We come before moments. We have an opportunity to move into something amazing. And the question is, are you going to move into the things of God, or are you going to move away from them? Are you going to move into what makes you uncomfortable, or are you going to move away from it? Are you going to move into what God is whispering, or are you going to go with religion that you're used to? They said to Moses, how about this? How about you speak to us, and we will listen. But don't let God speak to us, or we will die. There's a parallel verse in this we can read about, and I believe it's, you can look it up later on, but Deuteronomy 5:24 through 27. But basically they said this, how about this, Moses? How about you go to God and you establish this kind of covenant? You just tell him to give us the rules. You come and tell us the things we have to do, and we'll do that, but we don't want to talk to God. How about this, Moses? How about you go and you establish a covenant with God like all the other nations have, a master-slave covenant, where it's now about how we perform, about whether we obey all the precepts, about whether we do the duty that we're supposed to do. How about that? That's what all the other nations have. That's what all the other nations know. Their gods are warlords and despots. How about you give us that kind of God, Moses? The problem with so many of us, and myself included, is that God starts inviting us into something greater, and we're afraid. And what we actually do is we lean back into our old religion. We lean back into what makes us comfortable. Things that once were great and powerful in this church have now become formulas and practices, and you would rather lean into what you've already known than to actually experience something new. God says, I want to invite you into something that's going to require your heart. It's going to require your emotions. It's going to require you to learn to connect with me on a level that's disconcerting, that's going to expose all your mess, that's going to call you to a place you've never been. I'm inviting you to really know me and to create a community and a family that's got a lot of mess, but it's getting filled up with goodness and life and glory. And you go, no, I don't want that. I don't want people to know my mess. How about I'll just come and sing songs and raise my hands, throw a little money in the plate? Isn't that going for the glory? Maybe not. Well, I'm just going to show up to church. I'm going to do my duty. You know, I don't put much heart in this. I'm not really opening up my life to this. I'm not really taking time to really discover what it might mean to be a son or daughter of God. I'm just going to do my duty, and that ought to be enough, right? I'm going to come to church every Sunday. God is inviting Israel to a new place of encounter. And the problem is their old religion won't go away. What they know about God and what they understand about God doesn't fit the new opportunity. What I want to tell you here is this, that Israel actually missed one of the greatest opportunities ever afforded in all the Bible. Rather than embracing the reality of community, family, encounter, and glory, they embrace something else. And I stand before you today and I want to say this. I'm not sure what World Revival Church is going to do. I'm not sure where we're going to be. I'm not sure if we're going to actually move into the next stage that God has for us. I believe God has put us in the same position now. We as a church, are standing on the edge of the mountain. It's trembling. And God's inviting us to a new place of encounter, of relationship, of connection, of knowing and doing and being. He's inviting us to things that are very uncomfortable, things that don't fit what we've known and what we've experienced before. He's inviting us to go somewhere we've never been. He's giving us an opportunity that sometimes could feel very costly and sometimes can feel actually very wrong. But the question I have for you today, as you stand on the edge of the mountain, is this: would you be willing to go beyond everything you've ever known? Would you be willing to re-envision what God is trying to do with you? There are many here in this church sometimes that think that just putting a little energy in or just showing up is enough to really bring you to the place you need to go. But I'm trying to tell you something here. Lots of duty, lots of right behavior without the heart is going to miss this. Without having God come alive in the depths of your soul, without you really letting Him make you come alive, we are called to be the sons and daughters of the Most High God. We are part of the church of the firstborn. We are the people of God, and we are to know God, to relate to God, to commune with God, to have His presence, to have His strength, to have His goodness and His wonder and His glory. And I want to tell you something today. This sounds like a really harsh message, but it's not. I'm telling you, we're standing on the edge of something good. We're standing on an opportunity that could transform everything. If we would step in, if we would pour out our hearts, if we would find a way to not just be stuck into 2008, 1996, stuck into what was, but if we could say, you know what, that's good and that's right, but I'm not going to hold on to what's held on to me. I'm not going to hold on to what I've known. I'm not just going to go with my Pentecostal or Spirit-filled or revivalistic religion. I'm not going to go with what I encountered 10 years ago anymore. But I'm going to step right in the middle of the chaos, right in the middle of the darkness, right in the middle of the smoke and fire. And I'm going to say, this is a risk. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to live, but I'm going to do it. Sometimes here in our church, we got people that would rather have rules. You can keep staying. I'm almost done. Some of you here in church, you'd rather have some rules than actually be required to think or actually pour your heart in. Don't get me wrong. It's right to hear responsibilities and expectations. I'm not speaking against that. Just sitting around like, give me a list. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. You're supposed to love God. You're supposed to open up your life to God. You're supposed to let Him move the way He wants to move. You're supposed to move toward Him even if it doesn't seem like everything you think. You're supposed to get behind your leaders. You're supposed to follow Pastor Steve into the fire. Most churches that have been where we've been aren't able to go anywhere else. I don't know whether we're going to or not. Sometimes we're a little more stuck than we think. A little more dated than we think. Let's just be honest, friends. I don't know if we're going to make it through the fire. I don't know if we're going to discover our destiny as community, as family, as sons and daughters of the Most High. But I know the opportunity still stands before us. I know that today, if you would, you could make this choice. Listen here, I'm here for the long haul. I'm here to stand with Pastor Steve. I'm here. I want my children in this. I want to touch this city. I want to tell you something. Israel chose the lesser. You say, well, are you trying to say that the covenant they made with God was bad? No, I'm not. But God had something better in mind for them than what they took. I'm not here to criticize anything in the Bible. I'm not saying the Old Testament is bad. I'm not trying to say Israel was in a bad place. I'm just saying they could have had something better than they got, is what I'm saying. The question is, are you going to get something better than you got? Are you going to go with that religion that's been killing you? Those hidden sins, those fights you and your spouse are having, are you going to keep holding on to that, or are you going to get a new one? Let me tell you something. You may have had some fresh bread 10 years ago, but man, it gets stinky after a while. It's time for fresh bread, fresh encounter, fresh experience, fresh truth, fresh reality. Are you going to step into the smoke and the fire? Are you going to find your place in a deeper level of connection? It's going to cost you everything. It's going to make you put your life on the line. It's going to cause you to open up your life in ways you've never imagined. Are you going to do it? Are you going to stand? Why don't we have a prayer warriors come up here? So we say, JD, what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to just press into the Lord. You're supposed to just run into the fire. When God starts moving, you just run. I sat over here today, and God was moving over here with some guys, so guess what I did? I walked over where the guys were, because I'm not a fool. I'm going to go where God's going. Quit trying to get God to go your way. Stick your finger up and figure out where the wind's blowing and get right in the middle of it. You say, this is scary. Of course it is. You say, I'm not sure this will work out. It may not. You say, I'm not sure that people are going to think they're going to think I'm weird. They may. They may. What's it worth to you? Are you going to settle for some kind of dead religion? Or are you going to actually go for something that could transform the world? It's lying on the line. It's going to be up to you. What are you going to do? Come on. Let it be, Lord. Move in the midst of us. Touch us, change us, make us who we need to be.
Fresh outpouring till the fabric open. Come, Jesus, come. Breath of heaven, nothing left unshaken. Oh, we long for more. We need a fresh outpouring. Unleash a fresh outpouring. We need a fresh outpouring. Unleash a fresh outpouring. Fresh outpouring till the fabric open. Come, Jesus, come. Breath of heaven, nothing left unshaken. We long for more. We need a fresh outpouring. Unleash a fresh outpouring. We need a fresh outpouring. Unleash a fresh outpouring. Do us in this day, just like you said you would. Your word is not in vain. Our hearts reach heavenward. Fresh outpouring till the fabric open. Come, Jesus, come. So please